Hey, deserving listeners, 90 Day Fiancé, the tell-all. Let's watch.
I want to be part of the equation.
I don't know why you keep saying I like to or prefer to masturbate. It's not true at all.
But you were there for an entire month and you only had sex one time?
Uncool. Uncool, Sean. You only had sex one time? What is that judgment? Where is that judgment? Is that judgment on anyone? Is it judgment towards men in particular? Another way to ask it is that your preference, Gino? Or is there a reason why you didn't have sex more often? Now, I get where Sean's coming from because that's the general cultural notion that, particularly around men, it's like, what's wrong with you? You know, because I just want to point this out, that if we reverse the genders, I don't know if Sean would ask that question of Jasmine. You only had sex one time? The other thing is the assumption from society would be, well, you know, say this was reversed, because this is kind of, they are definitely challenging the stereotype. She's more conventionally attractive than him, and according to me, I guess, I don't know what you all think, and she likes sex with him, she wants sex with him more often, and he seems apparently less interested. And so it really is challenging the stereotype, but of course, that's great because stereotypes are often really quite silly. Imagine if we did reverse it, where it was more the stereotype, where Gino was like, I want to have sex more often, and Jasmine's like, I want to do stuff on my own. The assumption would be that Gino was bad in bed, and that Gino was some kind of terrible lover, if you will. But when it's this direction, at least from my sense of culture, we don't think that, we don't assume that. In fact, we probably assume that he's not a real man, or he is a wet noodle, or he lacks assertiveness, or he's scared or something. And it tells, and I don't know what y'all kind of thought of when you saw the scene, but we have to recognize those stereotypes and those automatic thoughts and really challenge them, because those kinds of assumptions really get in the way of our own sexual satisfaction, because all those assumptions and stereotypes really limit us and our ability to really understand our partners.
No.
How many times, Gino?
How many times, Jasmine?
I don't know exactly, but it was definitely more than once. Definitely more than
At the resort, we did it once, and it was so good. And why you punish me with sex? If you know that I am love with you is so freaking good. I love it.
Okay, so it's good that she's saying that, you know, to say, instead of you will have sex with me, it's I love it. I love doing it with you. I love that. It feels so, you know, good. And that's more inviting, right? It's less coercive, and it's more honest about what's happening for her. I imagine for her also, though, that it feels security enhancing, attachment security enhancing. So I don't know, but I'm just guessing that. And the other thing she said was, when you punish me with sex, I think what she's referring to, I don't know, maybe she'll go into it, is that she believes when she hurts him and bothers him, that he tries to communicate his hurt by refusing to have sex with her, which is a common enough behavior that I think is possible for Gino, particularly given their dynamic. We could imagine Gino being secretly upset and hurt, and this is a passive aggression. You know, when people talk about, passive aggressive behavior, they're often just applying that label to passive behavior or aggressive behavior that is smarmy. Passive aggression is when you're being hostile. Think of aggression as hostility. So you're hurt, and you've been hurt, your feelings have been hurt, and so you're attacking someone with hostility. A non-passive hostility is to call someone a name, to say you're a jerkface. A passive, and think hidden for passive, hidden hostility, when you're Gino and you're feeling attacked and accused of things unfairly, which has happened, but you lack the confidence or the wherewithal or the experience or the safety to communicate that directly and say, I don't like what you did, or even be directly hostile, which wouldn't be great, but at least it would be more clear as to what's happening. Like, hey, you were a jerk face yesterday for accusing me of that. We don't want to call people names, but at least it would not be passive. It wouldn't be hidden. It would be direct. When you don't feel like you have that ability or the safety to do that, or you don't have experience doing that, which Gino seems like that sort of person, you need the hostility to come out. You need your pain to be communicated somehow. And you will either consciously or subconsciously hide your hostility. It needs to come out, so you'll do it. And one of the ways that people will do that is by withholding sex. They'll say, I'm not in the mood, And the fantasy for the person doing that is, well, they'll detect my displeasure and will reflect on what they did to me yesterday that hurt my feelings, and they will never do that again. It almost never works, because to the person you're being passive aggressive to, they're hurt now. It hurts them. And even if they do connect it to their previous behavior, it's extremely bothersome to the other person, because you're just like, well, I'm not going to give you the satisfaction of giving you what you want without you asking for it directly. If you want something, tell it to me directly. Don't treat me like I'm a stranger, because that's kind of what you do to strangers, right? You're less upfront typically with strangers than you are to your partners, or at least that's the way it should be, right? So that's what I think Jasmine is accusing him of. We can imagine that happening. We don't know if that's happening, or she's just misinterpreting it, or it's both. Maybe we'll find out.
Gino, I love it. I'm vegan, but I want your freaking meat. Give me the meat. I want it. I'm 35. I shouldn't be begging a man for sex.
I mean, she's sad. She's almost crying, and I get that. But the way she phrases things, I mean, these are memes already, right? I said earlier that I wasn't able to watch this episode when it came out because I was in Disneyland, which I've been posting pictures, if you haven't seen, on YouTube and Instagram. And I assume that because I'm watching this almost a week later after this came out, and I'm assuming that's a meme, right? I'm vegan, but I want your freaking meat. That's got to be a Valentine's card already. I've seen that. So, like I'll go online to buy a card for my wife, and I'll see 90 Day Fiancé memes as Valentine's cards. Anyway. But she's sad. She's hurt. And, I'm not laughing at that, but that's just a glorious phrase. Maybe she didn't make it up. Maybe that's a thing that other people say, other vegans say.
Why I have to be begging sex to you?
Now, I've been talking about Jasmine. Gino, at this moment, is not helping, as is typical. There's so many things he could say in this moment that could help. He could say something like, honey, I love you, and I'm sorry. Sometimes I'm just not in the mood, and I know that hurts you, and I'm just so sorry. Or, you know what? Let's work on it. I want to have sex more often too, honey. Could we talk about it off camera? But I'm on the same page with you. And yeah, I think we did it more than once when I was in Panama, but we didn't do it very often. And I hear you, and I want that too. I'm on the same page with you. Or, well, honestly, I just don't have as much a libido as you, and I don't know what to do about it, because I don't want to feel like I'm having sex with you because I'm obligated or because it's a chore, because I feel like that'll ruin it for me. I've had experiences like that in the past, and I don't want to create that. I'll end up resenting you. So, let's work on it. But, that's kind of what I'm dealing with. I feel like I'm sort of a low libido person compared to you. Just say something. But what his defense in this moment is to withdraw, to become blank, to say nothing, and also, I think, to secretly judge. I think he goes into this space of, there she goes again, she's crazy and overly emotional, and he categorizes her and judges her without reflecting on his part in the situation.
That happens as we get into arguments frequently, and that does affect it. Okay, it does.
But sometimes we get in arguments because I'm in a bad mood, because I'm horny.
Right. So I was saying this earlier, and good for Gino for being able to talk about this. He's saying a very common low libido or difference in libido factor, which is when I am hurt because we had a fight, it doesn't motivate me to have sex, or I get passive aggressive by withdrawing instead of being direct with my partner about my displeasure or my feelings being hurt. I will passively, in a hidden way, try to communicate that by withdrawing, including withdrawing from sexual activity, because I know it's going to hurt them. So we don't know which one it is, but it's a very common thing that people will experience and talk about, is that we fight all the time and it doesn't make me want to do it. And then she says, which is a very common thing, is, which isn't, this one's a little bit more questionable. She's saying, because do we believe that Jasmine, if fully satiated sexually, would not occasionally explode emotionally? I think that I would imagine that just if she was having all the sex she wanted, I can't imagine that it would just erase her distortions and reactivity. But she's saying essentially that, at least in part, maybe in full, that, well, the reason why we get in fights and the reason why I get in such a bad mood and I'm a jerk face to you is because you don't have sex with me. This is a common high libido statement, not universal, of course, but highly problematic. Essentially, you're saying, well, if you have sex with me, then I won't treat you badly, which is not okay, right? So we usually want to honor the Gino side of the equation and say, okay, well, how can we reduce conflict? How can we recover from conflict? How can you, Jasmine, refrain from being unfair and hurtful so that it doesn't push them away? How can we talk about things to reinvigorate trust and goodwill and connection between the two of you? We don't want to force the low libido individual to have sex against their will and force themselves to do that, so that, because often in families and couples and systems, we're talking about everyone contributing to the problem. So you could argue, there's some issues with it, that he contributes by withholding sex and she contributes by being in a bad mood. That's the way they're framing it. And if either or both of them change the behavior, then they'll go to a higher level of functioning. If he were to have sex, that would help her to be in a better mood and there would be less fighting. If she weren't as triggered or weren't in a bad mood as often or weren't hurtful to him, then he would want to have sex. So we want to look at things like that, typically. But in a situation like this, we don't want to, like I said earlier, force, it's less problematic to ask someone in the Jasmine position to try to work on their emotional regulation, to work on their triggering, to work on their communication, to work on their self-care, such that they can get into better moods, such that that will suck in the Ginos of the world to have sex more often. We don't want to say to the Ginos, force yourself to have sex more often. That can be pretty awful for individuals for obvious reasons. I will say there are some rare times where, after we eliminate the possibility of that recommendation or that effort causing problems for the low libido person, we will actually talk about that. Like, for example, if I'm treating a couple like this and I screen the Gino person effectively and assess that if they can muster the energy to pursue sexual acts more often, that can contribute to the overall movement towards higher functioning and less conflict. So, but I want to make sure that I'm not recommending something to the Gino position that will push them into a really problematic, because you can imagine if you were sexually coerced, abused prior, that this would emulate that, right? That you're trying to please someone, trying to calm someone down by succumbing to their demands sexually. It's analogous to abuse sexually, so, and coercion and harm. So, but if I determine that they're not at risk of that, they don't have a history of that, I might try to help the Ginos identify with their own motivation to have sex, because we don't want them to not have sex. We don't want them to have sex when they don't want to. So we want to try to get the low libido person to access their desire to have sex. If it's there, it's not always there. Sometimes they just have low libido, or there's demisexuality, asexuality, who knows. But if it is there, we want to connect with that. So sometimes we can work on that. We can also encourage the person to put more effort into pursuing, to initiating, for example. And it's not always necessary, but that's just another element. But of course, the more fruitful field to plant our seeds, if you will, is to reduce their conflict, right? Because that will help everything, not only their sexuality, but their relationship. So that would be what I would work on, is the things I've been talking about prior, the preoccupation, the avoidance from him, that kind of stuff.
And I cannot you.
Wow.
Okay.
I love you, Jasmine.
Gino, you gotta reciprocate that passion.
Yeah, and I want to improve the situation, okay? And I want to argue less.
But if the argument's over not having sex, just have sex.
Yikes. No. Again, what if the gender was reversed? Would you say that to a woman? For good reason, you would not. And you would also not say it to a man. You wouldn't say to a woman, well, he is really horny and he's demanding sex and he's in a bad mood and he verbally abuses you sometimes. He's demanding sex from you. Just have sex with him. You wouldn't say that, because at least, hopefully, well, some people would, obviously, but at least there would be some awareness. I don't know about Mike. I would imagine Mike would have that awareness that that's not okay. Like, it's not Gino's fault that she's in a bad mood. It's not, you could argue, well, a lot of the time, sometimes it is, but sometimes it's not. So we don't know. But at the very least, even if she's in a bad mood, that doesn't mean that he's forced to have sex with her. And again, this is all based on this notion that men always want to have sex, that men can't be abused, that men can't be coerced, that men can't be traumatized sexually, which is ridiculous. Like I've said earlier, it's not as if men and women are different species of animal. But even if they were, it's not like whatever species you imagine males to be of, that they can't be traumatized. Anyway, but yeah, Mike is exhibiting, I think, what a lot of people would say that is highly destructive. There are so many men who, regardless of sexual orientation, who have internalized this kind of messaging and will push themselves into sexual. They essentially, and women, people of all genders do this, but it's a particular problem for men because of lack of awareness. Well, I would say it's a particular problem for everyone in different ways, because certainly a lot of women are socialized to succumb and to please, and so they will be more susceptible to victimization that way. But men are also socialized. They're also very susceptible to victimization in this way, but for a different reason, because they're socialized to believe that it's wrong for them not to want to have sex when it's offered, and it's emasculating, and they're a weak person if they can't rise to the occasion and constantly want to do it all the time. So anyway, Mike is exhibiting what I imagine a lot of people would say.
Like, I see him and everybody, oh, what do you look at Gino? I don't know. He's so unsexy that is attractive for me, his body, his belly, that's super attractive for me.
Okay, good. I don't know why this is coming up right now, but his unsexiness is what make him sexy for me. There's so many memes that are happening in a short span. Just that face. It's interesting. Yeah. Like I said, the lid for every pot. Sexual attraction is a very particular thing. There are, commonalities among some people, but I don't think I've ever heard that before. But like I said, sexuality is interesting. Comment below if you have that experience. I'm curious because about someone's being so unsexy that they become very sexy to you. And what does that mean? I'm curious about that because I've heard of a lot of experiences and I don't know if I've heard it, or at least it described that way.
Baby,
Yeah,
it says
so-
a sleepover situation that translate into sex. You
No,
were paying $300 a night.
There was more options of girls that I was more attracted to
If you actually paid them.
for dinner.
Oh my God.
I was not having sex with these girls.
First off, there's nothing wrong with consenting adults both providing and being a customer in sex work or companionship, paid companionship work. There's nothing shameful about it. It shouldn't be illegal. It should be protected. You know, when we make it legal, when we legalize it, we allow for regulation, for employment regulations, like you can't harm your employees, you have to pay them enough, you have to give them vacations and breaks and healthcare and that kind of stuff. And protection from the law. When you're at McDonald's, which is a legal restaurant, and someone comes in and assaults you, you can call the police. If you are a sex worker in some areas, it's hard to do that because you might not be treated well by the legal system because according to the legal system, you might not deserve the same amount of protection. It's not always like that. But the point is, it's like, there's nothing wrong with it. Okay. Now, according to religion, maybe there's something wrong with it, but I hope most religious people understand that most people do not agree with your religion. Now, many religions might believe that, but many religions don't, and plenty of people don't adhere to any religion. A religion is a belief system. It's fine, but I hope, understand that you can't impose that on other people. Most people don't believe in your religion. So there's also a Victorian idea, 1800s, Europe, East Coast, United States, notion around purity and sexuality being of animals and being of the lower races. You know, that proper white gentlemen and ladies, they don't give in to their animal nature. They are above it, and sexuality was a part of that. I mean, I'm summarizing pretty briefly, but point is we come from that legacy. It's 2022, but we still have all of that infused in our society today. It informs sex negativity. It informs all the ills that we have as a society regarding sex and gender and everything else. So, and a lot of other things else. The point is that it's fine. The judgment that he's he's not getting a lot of judgment, but there's a little bit of judgment. But then for Mike to laugh at Gino when it is out in the open that he was a sex work customer with Jimena, for Mike to laugh, you would think Mike could be like, oh yeah, okay, I could see that. But let's rewind that.
Yeah,
It says
so-
a sleepover situation that translate into sex. You
No,
were paying $300 a night.
There was more options of girls that I was more attracted to
If you actually paid them.
for dinner.
Oh my God.
Well, actually, maybe Mike is rewatching it, which is always good for me to do because sometimes I misinterpret things, which I'm sure y'all notice sometimes. But that's the nature of reaction videos, I suppose. And it would take too long for me to rewatch every scene every time. Anyway, point is that maybe I was wrong. Maybe Mike is saying, oh, come on, you had sex with those women, that kind of thing. Which I understand that assumption, but and we understand that he lies, and Gino lies. So, and this would be one of those lies that he would commit. So, I would give it a pretty good chance that he did have sex with some of these workers and is obscuring it because it would be absolutely the sort of thing he would obscure. But it's also possible that he didn't. The other thing is this all happened before the relationship with Jasmine. So unless Jasmine has some sort of religious or value-based criticism of this, it's all just in the past. and isn't some sort of violation to Jasmine, and is no indictment on his personality. He was pretty clear about why he did it. He was lonely. That's what a lot of people are motivated by when they do this sort of thing. They would rather meet someone and have someone, not everyone, some people want the sex work format because it is easier to navigate for them. Anyway, point is that's not, but a lot of people, as a lot of sex workers will attest to, that there's a lot of lonely people out there who are having trouble meeting someone, who might be traveling for work or whatever, who are recently divorced or whatever, and they just want some human contact. And for a lot of men, heterosexual men, well, I guess all men of all sexual orientations, we are socialized to downplay our needs and our emotions, but to amplify our sexuality. And so when we are unaware as men, and particularly involved in toxic masculinity, and have internalized a lot of sexist ideas about who we are, we will have a need of emotional connection. We'll want to connect emotionally. We'll want attunement. We'll want someone to understand us, to know us, to be with us, to support us. But that's women's stuff, and that's weak. And so but it's in there. So we will channel it all to sexuality. And so we already want sex, potentially, but the sexual focus and the motivation becomes 100-fold because we're channeling all of our human needs through one channel. And we might go to facilities where there are people that you can pay and to just get a fix of emotional contact. And I would imagine that is what the case is for Gino. We also are learning that his libido might not be exactly super strong on the bell curve of sexual motivation. Given we don't know that, maybe he has an average or above average, but with Jasmine it's different because of the conflict. But it's entirely possible that all of his activity with these workers were conversational and companionship, someone to talk to, someone to give you that feeling like you're kind of on a date or something. And so, I could also see Gino completely lying about this, because there wouldn't be an easy way to discover him lying, which he has a track record of lying. But if I were their therapist, I would say, Jasmine, tell us, how do you feel when you think about him in his past? What's going on with you? Because that's probably the most fruitful path to take with her, because I think she would, if she could dig down deep, she would say, well, it makes me worry that he's going to do it again and I'm going to lose him, or he's going to cheat on me and that's going to hurt my feelings. I'm pretty sure that's what she would say if she could be honest with herself. And then I'd say, okay, well, we can't do anything about what happened before he met you, but we can do something about right now. What would make you feel more secure? How can you communicate that? How can you say to Gino, when I think about your past, it triggers me in the present about losing you. Can you reassure me that I'm in a safe relationship? Can you tell me something? Can you hug me? Can we have sex soon to reassure me? Is that okay? That's fine. And that's wonderful. And that is functional. And that is universal. We all have those needs, and we all should be communicating that. In fact, here's the lesson for the day. There used to be, the more you know, let me ask you a question, all out there, if you're in a relationship. If you're in any sort of relationship, but particularly spousal relationship, but really any relationship, friendships as well, family. When was the last time that you asked your person that you're attached to for an emotional need of yours to be met by them? Just think, when was the last time? Now, some of you will be like, well, I just asked them like 5 minutes ago. But some of you might literally have nothing that you can come up with. You might have 5 years ago, but, and I mean actually ask them directly. Something like, I'm feeling lonely and distant from you, and I would like to feel closer to you. or I have a lot on my mind and I'm stressed out and I need someone to just listen to me for 15 minutes. Can you do that? Something like that. When was the last time you did that? Some of you, recently. Some of you, you can't remember a single time. Maybe you've literally never done it in your life. Now, there are reasons, because you distrust because of what you went through. But that is the path to happiness. That's the path to attachment security. Those are the phrases that you should be saying often, maybe daily. Let me throw out a couple more. I am really feeling unsexy today and unattractive. Can you tell me that I'm hot? Can you counter my paranoia that you are not attracted to me? Another one, and of course, if you ever hear someone make this request, rise to the occasion. That is the moment. If you do not, oh boy, someone asks you directly for that and you do not deliver the way that sometimes Gino doesn't. I mean, Jasmine rarely is direct, but then you are doing a double trauma to the person. Not only are they not getting their needs met, but they have laid themselves bare and you have not delivered. So over deliver. When someone asks you, here's another, the more you know, when someone asks you, or even they sort of indicate, oh, I look fat in these jeans, whatever, over deliver. It's hard to over deliver in that situation. Now, of course, read the room, figure a situation out, but lean into it. Don't say, well, maybe they don't need me to say anything, or, well, I kind of did a little bit. We see with Jasmine and Gino where Jasmine will be more forthcoming or indicate some need, and Jasmine or Gino will say just like very little, and it'll be something, and I will praise that. But I'm like, Gino, give it, pour it on a little thicker, because it would help everyone. Jasmine mainly, but also you, because it creates more security for her and less reactivity.
I having sex with these girls, dinner.
How much would you pay them?
I can't remember exactly off the top of my head.
300.
Probably varied, probably 100 or less.
$100, okay.
But this is my past. This is
Okay, Jasmine's saying 300, he's saying 100 or less. I'm guessing he's lying about that. I feel like he mentioned 200 before. It doesn't matter, as he says, it's in the past. But Gino, why would you lie? But he does that. If he is lying, which I wouldn't be surprised, it's that pathological lying, right? It's out there in the open. It's been discussed backwards and forwards. You would go to these individuals and pay them. What does it matter if it was 100 or 300? It doesn't matter. It doesn't change. But that's what pathological liars will do. They will lie when it doesn't make a lot of sense, and it is just shooting you in the foot. There are a lot of paths to pathological lying, as I've discussed. There's psychopathy, antisocial, but there's also this knee-jerk reaction that's developed neurologically because you got in trouble a lot, and so you had to lie very impulsively without questioning things, because that made it easier to get away with it.
How many dates like this did you go on, Gino?
Probably less than 5.
Gino, you know that is more than that. Don't make me speak the truth.
Right. I mean, one, I don't know why he's being interrogated about this. Two, I'm guessing he is lying, and I'm guessing she knows. And it's just interesting to see the dynamic that's playing out. That he's willing to admit it, but he minimizes it, and it's shadiness. And I've worked with people like this. It's hard. I will get the Ginos of the world to admit to themselves and to me, and maybe to their partner, that they do have this pathological lying. It can sometimes be a long road to get to that point where they can just admit it to themselves, like, yeah. Because in order to admit that, they have to sit with reality and sit with the possibility of being rejected for, some people who lie a lot, they actually believe that they can't get love if they're truthful, if they're themselves, because there's something deeply wrong with them. So they're in this constant effort of trying to trick everyone around them that they're somehow different than who they really are, because they assume who they really are is rejectable and repulsive. Another path, just while I'm on this jag, is that it can be modeled to you. So you can watch a parent lie frequently to you or others, and we mimic our caregivers. It's why we all have a native language, because our parents didn't teach us how to speak our accent and language. We just watch them intently, and the same goes for all sorts of behavior, including lying behavior, unfortunately.
What is the sugar baby relationship like? Like, what does that whole thing entail?
I mean, it's just like a friendly date where the man could help out for companionship, that the man could pay some money.
Right. I don't know why they're going into this. It's not relevant. I mean, I guess it's mildly relevant in that, well, it wasn't the person he sent the picture to a former person that he paid. I don't know. Anyway, I don't want to start that rumor. Jasmine is saying it's at least 30. I tend to believe Jasmine because Gino lies so frequently, and this would be exactly the sort of thing that he would lie about. And he didn't protest when she said more than 30. So there's, Sean's like, what's the deal with this kind of relationship? And he's like, well, you help them out with money and they are a companion for a night or something. Like, is it that hard to comprehend?
Okay.
To go on a date. There's probably some women on there that are looking for more than just dinner.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, my. Yeah, okay, Gino.
I really don't understand why Mike is particularly making faces. I don't know exactly what the faces mean, but you would think that Mike would be over there going, oh, okay, I could see that, because it's not the exact thing that Mike did with Jimena, but it's pretty close. So I don't understand why Mike is shaking his head at this and ridiculing him. Well, let's think about that. Why would Mike do that? He's ashamed of himself. I think that's true, right? For Mike, in that fight, that final fight when he was refusing to leave, he seemingly was shaming Jimena for being a webcam person. And by the way, actually, a patron of the podcast is a cam model. I think that's what we refer to him, and reached out to me, and I'm going to be interviewing her for the podcast, an audio podcast, about what it's like for her. So if you want to provide more context, email in, don't comment below, because I might not see that. If you have experiences with cam modeling or being a customer that you'd like to add, I might read it on the podcast. Go to psychologyinseattle.com, hit the contact button. There should be a link below that goes directly there, and fill out the form. That, by the way, that's the surest way of contacting me, is through our website. There are just simply too many places where people are commenting for me to even remember to look at that. And plus so if you really just want to contact me, go there. And I am mortified sometimes, because years later, I'll come across a comment or a direct message on Instagram or something, someone actually asking me a very important question, and I will not have seen it. And I'm mortified, thinking, did they think I just blew them off? Did they think I just didn't answer? So now with email, I might not answer as well for various reasons, time reasons and that sort of thing. But 98% of the time, I'm at least going to read the email. Let's just put it that way. While I'm on that topic, I do see a lot of the comments, though, on YouTube. And when y'all are being nice, I appreciate it a lot. A lot of you, I was actually commenting on YouTube, because I posted a picture. What did I post? I posted a picture about going to Disneyland, and someone said something really nice. What did they say? Meta said, I'm glad that Dr. Honda feels safe enough to share bits of his personal life with his internet family. Kudos to us. And I don't know, I just really like that comment, because it's like, it's great that he feels like, he can share with us, and that reflects on us. That means that we, as the YouTube commenting community to this channel, must be creating a safe place for him to share these photos, which is absolutely true. I would not be. In fact, for years, I've had this YouTube channel for 14 years. The first 12 and a half years or 13 years, I didn't share any photos on YouTube because it was not a safe place for me to share. But more recently, there's been a different community, a different vibe, and activity from people. So I said, yeah, y'all are super nice people. I like that because, I was like, it's true. Kudos to you. So anyway, if you have something that you would like me to consider when I do an episode on cam modeling and maybe sex work in general on the internet, go to the website, email in, and I will, and put in the subject line for episode with cam model, something like that. Because Stacy sees the emails and then she forwards them to me.
All right, so we met on, believe it or not, a sugar baby site.
I have my best friend, and she suggested putting my ad on a website,
Interesting. I actually was lost until she I thought they were asking, I thought Sean was asking Gino where he met those other women. And so he's like, well, we actually met on a sugar baby website. And I'm like, yeah, isn't that well known? But no, they're talking about how these two met, which is, interesting detail, similar to Mike and Jimena, which is not shameful. It is fine. It adds a wrinkle to Jasmine's judgment this entire season of what he was doing before, does it not?
For dating internationally, I have no idea what the website was about. That is in the past, okay?
It's possible, and Jasmine doesn't have a track record of lying, so I tend to believe her, but that's a little hard to believe, that you would make a profile on a sugar baby website. Now, maybe is that a common term, anyway. Now, maybe the website obscures even to the users who are naive, as Jasmine might be, as to the nature of what the website is. Possible. I don't know. Jasmine doesn't seem that naive. She seems like she would at least eventually understand after making the profile, oh, I get what this website is about. So is she obscuring that because she's ashamed of that, which I would hope she wouldn't? I think in Panama there might be, I don't know so much about Panama, but I know about other Latin countries of, where there's a lot of Catholicism and a lot of traditional attitudes. Certainly the United States isn't immune to that or doesn't have elements of that. For sure it does. But I have Latinx friends who will inform me about how traditional and how conservative, especially around things like this, they can be. Again, I don't know about Panama. So I don't know if for her she's ashamed of herself or something. Certainly in the United States, there would be a lot of shame. So maybe there's a lot more shame. But okay, what do we think about this? Well, nothing. Who cares where they met? And who cares if he was having consensual paid interactions with other consenting adults? Who cares if Jasmine even had an inkling of like, well, maybe I could do that work and earn some extra money? Who cares that she went on the website to meet someone from another country and was looking to date someone from another country? Who cares? It's all fine. There's nothing to be ashamed of. It's interesting, I suppose, in the same way that it's like, how'd you meet? Well, we met on Tinder. Oh, we met in a bar. Or someone introduced us. We met on a sugar baby website. Who cares?
Putting my ad on a website, for dating internationally. I have no idea what the website was about. That is in the past, okay? I forgave you. I gave you a new opportunity to be with me because I love you. And when I love, I'm stupid.
So I'm a little confused as what she was talking about at the end there. She's saying, we met on this website. I didn't know what it was about. I was trying to meet someone internationally and I forgave you. Forgave him for what? For being a customer on a site that you were on? Or was there an edit transition? Weird? I don't know.
That's up.
It's really up.
Oh my gosh. I even want to cry.
Yeah, it's pretty awful. And side note, Jasmine comes across, I don't know, in the edit as someone who has preoccupied attachment, who also might be on the borderline personality spectrum, meaning that in my conceptualization, in my model of understanding personality, there isn't like this moment when people become fully border or fully any personality disorder, that you can have very mild versions. Traditionally, in the field, we call them having personality disorder traits, like borderline personality disorder traits. But to me, that still denies what I believe to be that people are on a spectrum, because there's only two categories. You either have the personality or you have traits, or you don't have the personality disorder. That's just three categories. To me, there's a slider bar, and the signs that she might be on the borderline personality spectrum is that she gets easily triggered, and I believe gets very, very hurt and very, very scared, and then gets angry sometimes. Now, the picture being shared to Gino's from her partner, her reaction was absolutely commensurate. I mean, not everyone would have that reaction, but it was pretty appropriate to the situation. Other reactions, like one of his exes still having his ex-wife still having his last name, and her having a pretty big reaction to that, I think most people would say that's not commensurate. So when you go through relational traumas of abandonment and betrayal and or abuse, you have this deep, deep fear that no one will ever love you. In fact, you're pretty convinced that no one's ever going to love you, and you're pretty convinced that you're not lovable. And you, of course, you have all the human needs of desperation for closeness, partially because you're a human, but also because you've never had that. You've never had security in your life. So you get easily hurt, you get easily angry, and we see that tendency in her. I don't know how far, to fully, of course, I'm not diagnosing from afar. I'm just saying that the presentation on the show, because we all understand this is edited. The cast members could be completely putting on a show for us. We don't know. And that happens sometimes. We understand. So I'm not diagnosing. I'm just saying that the reason why I'm bringing this up is that some people who can be conceptualized as being preoccupied and or on the borderline personality spectrum will report an experience of being very empathetic towards other people. Sometimes on the internet, they'll call them empaths, which I'm a little dubious about that term, but or highly sensitive people. Sometimes they'll be framed that way, although that's not the same thing. That's a whole other research area. But the point is that why would that be? Well, my conceptualization is that when you're young and you're being inconsistently attuned to either abuse or on and off parents, or a parent who leaves and comes back, there's various different paths to that. But the experience to the child is like, sometimes I get my needs met and sometimes I don't. And it's usually the breeding ground for preoccupation and borderline. And you learn, okay, one, I'm not lovable and I'm abandonable and everyone's going to leave me eventually, which is horrible. I just have to assume that because that's what's always happening. And two, I have to really, really pay attention to my caregivers, my attachment figures, because I need to game the system, because I need to capitalize on moments when attunement is available and attachment security is available. Because if I don't hyper vigilantly pay attention to that, it will pass me, the opportunity will pass me by like a train in the night, and I'll never get my needs met. And so the child becomes, and their neurons actually orient themselves to be very perceptive about other people's emotional states. Sometimes it's because you have an alcoholic parent, that sort of thing, because if you can really get inside your parent's head, then one, you can game the system to get your needs met, and two, you can avoid abuse. Like, I had a client once who reported that she could tell how drunk her dad was by the way he walked up the front stairs to the house. She would watch him walk up to the house And she knew on a scale from 1 to 10 how drunk he was just by the cadence of his walk. And there's obvious reasons why she would be highly attuned to that, because one, in the family system, she was the child that was elected to take care of the dad and let everyone else off the hook for that. But also because when he was fairly drunk, he was more prone to abuse and really, really scary behavior. So it was very, logical for her to be good at that. And it wasn't like she set out to be good at that. Her neurons, just because it's very important, and she was rewarded for that focus and that skill, her brain oriented itself to pay attention to that. It's like a muscle in the mind. And so, contrast to me, my parents never drank at all, really, and I wasn't abused. I can't tell you anything about the way my dad walked home from work. You'd park the car, walk to the house. I don't remember paying attention to that at all because I didn't need to. So along these lines, if your brain develops in that circumstance, you will, as an adult, have that skill applied to everyone. Not always, but sometimes. To the point where you start noticing, in contrast to other people around you, that you're very good at reading other people's emotional states. And sometimes you go on the internet and you'll hear this label called empath. I call it a side effect of inconsistent attunement growing up. There's not really a label to it, or a possible symptom of preoccupation, anxious attachment, and or borderline personality. Sometimes histrionic people are like this as well. Sometimes dependent people are like this as well, dependent personality disorder. Anyway, and so I wonder for Jasmine if she has that experience, because we see two different reactions. We hear they're watching this situation with Kim and Usman, and Usman is pouring his heart out wanting to be with this other woman, and Kim is having to watch that. And Gino's watching that, and he's like, well, that sucks. But I'm just guessing, Jasmine watches that and is like starting to cry and is probably really feeling it, because her neurons, her nervous system is oriented in a way that it's very noticing of that and really lets it in, because when she was young, I don't know, it might have served her to involuntarily let emotions into her such that she would be more likely to notice the emotional state of someone else, such that she would be able to protect herself and get her needs met.
All right, well, that does it for that episode. Everyone out there, please take care of yourself and take care of others, because we all deserve it. We really, really do.